Daihatsu's Terios makes a genuinely strong case for itself if you want an inexpensive small 4x4 but don't want the hassle of buying used. It isn't intended for serious off-road duties, but for small families in rural areas living active lives, it might be a clever alternative to a conventional compact car. Now, just because you need a compact runabout, you don't have to buy a Super Mini or a family hatchback. Wouldn't it be nice if you could buy one of those small Freelander size 4x4s? Well, yes it would, as long as it came with affordable running costs and a sub £15,000 price tag. Now, if you think that sounds like a big ask, then perhaps you need to be thinking about Daihatsu's Terios. This rare combination of virtues isn't an easy one to perfect, and the Japanese brand has had a couple of stabs at getting it right. The first generation version arrived here in 1997, but a noisy engine, a bouncy ride and a narrow cabin meant that it wasn't universally well received. The second generation model arrived in 2006 and was a considerable improvement. Much bigger, though still on the small side, and it was a much better steer. Finally, you could recommend it to budget buyers bored with ordinary runabouts. Now, you don't buy an affordable 4x4 and expect it to be much fun to drive. They simply aren't. Nor am I about to pretend that this Terios bucks the trend in this respect, although the ride and the flat cornering stance are both better than I was expecting. True, it's not up to the highest standards that you'll find in compact family cars, but then many owners will happily trade that for this Daihatsu's high-set driving position and trendy go-anywhere looks. The steering and the gear change can feel a bit vague, but this is a very nimble car for a small urban 4x4. Now, the penalty for that nimble handling is off-road ability that's decidedly modest. At first glance, this little Daihatsu looks more of a proper off-road tool than more car-like 4x4s like Suzuki's SX4 or Fiat Sedici. But with a mere 17 centimetres of ground clearance, the reality is that it isn't. Find a little more for a Suzuki Grand Vitara if that's what you want. Still, although this Daihatsu isn't the ideal tool to take out into the wilds, wheel articulation is surprisingly good, and although it will adopt some surprisingly dramatic angles of lean through a gnarly off-road course, it'll usually manage to keep its underbelly from scraping too badly. More likely usage will be from potential owners living up steep hills in rural areas or down unmade roads. And for them, permanent four-wheel drive with a 50-50 front-to-rear torque split and a lockable centre differential that cuts in automatically or can be selected manually via this button down here. For them, that should keep them mobile even in the snowiest cold snap. What you won't buy this car for is a lifestyle that involves regular motorway trips. They've rather oddly named this car the B-Go in Japan, but Go isn't really a feature of the 103 brake horsepower 1.5 litre petrol engine that really isn't at its best in these conditions. Since it hasn't got much pulling power, you've usually got to extend it to the point where it becomes slightly raucous. Rest to 60 is 12.4 seconds away, but top speed is limited to just 99 miles an hour. The Terios shares many of its underpinnings with the second generation Toyota RAV4, which is actually quite a good recommendation. Now, unlike the first generation Terios, there's enough space inside to suit young families, even though at just over 4,000 millimetres long, it's about the same size as a Ford Fiesta. 3 head restraints here inside might be a bit optimistic. The cabin remains rather narrow for 3 adults to sit comfortably across the back seat, but there's enough head and leg room for 2 to be quite comfortable, and the same applies to the 2 who'll be sitting in the front. Now, the rear seats themselves are pretty versatile. You can recline them to make rear seat passengers more comfortable on longer journeys, and obviously you can fold them completely to increase luggage space. Now, you've got 338 litres without the seats folded, and you can increase that to 780 litres if you pull this strap and push them right forward. Now, those figures are respectively a little more and a little less than you get in a modern Super Mini. but the area itself is really usable. It's large and square, as you can see, ideal for those parents humping around pushchairs and buggies, or perhaps for wheelchair users. The interior is clean and unfussy, though obviously still built to a budget price. All the controls are simply laid out. You've got this nice integrated stereo system, though it unfortunately doesn't play MP3 discs, and the cowled instruments are a nice touch. The seats aren't that comfortable on long journeys, but they do adjust for height, as does the steering wheel, though it doesn't adjust for reach. All-round visibility is good, which will make the car ideal for urban users. List prices suggest that you'll pay between £13,000 and £15,000 for your Daihatsu Terios. That's about the same kind of money as Suzuki will demand from you for more affordable versions of their Grand Vitara. Though these cars are like Suzuki's cheaper but cruder Jimny model, only come with 3 doors. If you want 5 doors, a Grand Vitara will cost you £1,000, probably a couple of thousand more, as will a model like Jeep's Patriot. Though both of these cars will attempt to justify that premium with a more powerful engine that adds to your running costs but makes a more relaxed cruiser. For a Terios budget, you could also consider 5-door family hatchback 4-wheel drive models like Suzuki's SX4 foregrip or Fiat Sedici. Or perhaps you could spend a similar amount on a plush Fiesta. That kind of puts the price into perspective. With a single 1.5 litre engine, petrol powered, and a single 5-door body style, the Terios range isn't that difficult to get a handle on. All models get reversing sensors, air conditioning, a single CD player, all-round electric windows and remote central locking. There's plenty of safety kit on the face of it too. You've got anti-lock brakes with electronic brake force distribution to maximise their effectiveness, and twin front and side airbags. Less laudably, there are a few items on the safety front that don't even make it to the options list, including curtain airbags and the kind of ESP stability control system that would get you out of trouble in slippery conditions or if you enter a corner too fast. Unless you're loading the car to the gunwales and flogging the 1.5 litre petrol engine, then fuel economy should be okay. You'll get 35.8 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 29.1 miles to the gallon around town. Although the emissions figure of 185 grams per kilometre of CO2 is pretty high for a compact car. Those are the kind of running cost figures you'd expect from something like a 2 litre Ford Mondeo. Insurance groupings, well, they should range between 7 and 8, and residuals are reasonably high for a compact 4x4. You should get around 40% of what you paid for your Terios back after 3 years. And one reason why, perhaps, is Daihatsu's excellent 5-year warranty that comes with 5 years of roadside assistance. For the money, there's no 5-door rival with the same proper SUV feel. And it's that attractive pricing that opens up Terios ownership to those who'd otherwise probably never consider a 4x4 at all. Now, there are a few sacrifices to be made in terms of car-like dynamics and running costs, but they're not too great, and in return you get that elevated seating position and the all-weather security of permanent 4-wheel drive. Often overlooked, this Daihatsu would probably tick quite a few people's buying boxes, if only they knew about it.